The shadow moved across my kitchen wall. The floorboards creaked. I froze at the top of the stairs. My hand tightened around a heavy iron flashlight. It was 2 a.m. I was 20 miles from the nearest paved road. I crept down the wooden steps. I clicked the beam on. A massive man in a canvas jacket stood by my sink. He held a wrench. He did not flinch when the light hit him. He squinted, lowered the tool, and wiped grease off his hands with a dirty rag. "You're leaking," he said. His voice was gravel and dirt.
Under the basin. It's pooling into the foundation.
My chest tightened. I gripped the flashlight harder. "Who are you, and why are you in my house?" He tossed the rag onto the counter.
I'm Wyatt. I own the ranch on the other side of the ridge. And the door was wide open.
Let me tell you how this started. I bought the cabin on Blackwood Ridge 3 weeks earlier. I gave an online broker my entire savings account for a patch of land, sight unseen. I needed a place where no one knew me. The pictures online showed a charming rustic retreat. Therefore, I expected a quiet life. But the reality was a rotting wooden box. The porch sagged. The roof missed half its shingles. Wildlife lived in the chimney. I spent my first 3 days scrubbing layers of grime off the windows. I cried into a sleeping bag every night. Wyatt did not leave after fixing my sink. He stepped out onto the porch. He looked at the missing shingles under the moonlight.
You won't last a month up here.
Wyatt said. I didn't ask for your opinion. I told him. I crossed my arms to stop my hands from shaking. He looked me up and down. His eyes were dark. They took in my oversized sweater and the flashlight I still held like a weapon.
I'll come by tomorrow with some tar paper. You're going to get rain by Tuesday.
He walked off into the dark before I could tell him to stay away. I locked the door. I slid a chair under the knob. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. Because the next morning, a battered blue truck rolled up my dirt driveway. Wyatt stepped out. In the daylight, he was even more intimidating. Broad shoulders, worn denim, a face shaded by a faded Stetson. He didn't knock. He pulled a ladder from his truck bed. He leaned it against my roof. I watched him from the kitchen window. A cold knot formed in my stomach. I went outside. I stood at the bottom of the ladder. I can't pay you for this, I said. I spent everything I had on the deed. Wyatt paused mid-climb. He looked down at me. His jaw tightened. He turned back to the roof.
Didn't ask for money.
For the next 2 weeks, Wyatt was there every day. He showed up at dawn. We worked side by side in the brutal summer heat. The physical labor was exhausting. My hands blistered. My back ached constantly. But I found myself waking up early. I listened for the crunch of his tires on the gravel. We didn't talk much at first. We communicated in grunts. We handed off tools. Slowly, the ice cracked. One afternoon, I was trying to pry a rusted nail out of a window frame. The crowbar slipped. I scraped my knuckles hard against the wood. I hissed. I dropped the tool. Wyatt was beside me in a second. He took my hand. His fingers were rough and calloused, but his touch was gentle. He turned my hand over. He inspected the blood.
You need to slow down.
He murmured. He was standing too close. I smelled cedar dust and sweat. I looked up. His face was inches from mine. His eyes dropped to my mouth. I couldn't swallow. I'm fine, I whispered. His thumb brushed over my uninjured skin.
No, you're not.
He held my gaze for a long moment. He let my hand go. He stepped back. The cold air rushed in to fill the space between us. I stood there for 5 minutes after he walked away. I tried to get my breathing under control. I had sworn off men. I came out to the ridge to be alone. Therefore, I tried to ignore him. But every time Wyatt looked at me, my walls crumbled a little more. I thought I was safe. I thought I was building a new life. I was wrong, because the storm he predicted finally hit on a Thursday evening. It was a torrential downpour. Thunder shook the floorboards. I sat by the wood stove reading a paperback. I heard a heavy knock. I unbolted the door. Wyatt stood on the porch. He was soaked to the bone. Water dripped from the brim of his hat.
Truck died in the mud at the bottom of your hill,
He said. His voice was barely audible over the rain. Come in, I said. I pulled him inside. I pushed the door shut against the wind. He took off his hat. He wiped his face. He looked around the cabin. It was warm now. Dry. The roof held. He looked at the dry ceiling, then at me. You did good, Wyatt said. I handed him a towel. We did good. He took the towel. Our fingers brushed. He didn't pull away. Neither did I. He dropped the towel onto a chair. He took a step toward me. The fire popped in the stove.
I shouldn't be here.
Wyatt said, softly. Then, leave. I said. My voice was a plea, not a command. He didn't leave. He closed the distance between us. His hands framed my face. The cold rain on his skin was a sharp contrast to the heat of his mouth when he kissed me. My hands tangled in his wet hair. I pulled him closer. He walked me backward. My spine hit the log wall. The kiss deepened. He tasted like rain and coffee. I felt a surge of absolute certainty. For the first time in years, my muscles relaxed. I felt safe. I woke up the next morning, alone in my bed. The storm had passed. Sunlight streamed through the clean windows. I pulled the quilt up to my chin. I heard a vehicle outside. I assumed Wyatt had gotten his truck started. I threw on a robe. I walked out to the porch. It wasn't Wyatt. It was a sleek black SUV. A man in a suit stood by the hood. He held a leather briefcase. He looked out of place among the pines and mud.
Can I help you?
I asked. I crossed my arms. The man walked up the porch steps. Are you Clara Hayes? Yes. I'm David Vance. I represent the county assessor's office. We've been trying to reach you by mail. There's no receptacle out here. I frowned. Reach me about what? He opened his briefcase. He pulled out a manila envelope.
About your eviction.
A cold, falling sensation hit me. Eviction? I own this property. I bought it last month. David pulled out a sheet of paper. He handed it to me.
You bought a forged deed, Ms. Hayes. The man who sold you this property online did not have the title. His name is Cole Miller. He runs this scam on abandoned county properties. He takes the cash, issues a fake electronic deed, and vanishes.
I stared at the paper. The letters swam together. No, that's impossible. I checked the county records.
You checked a cloned website.
David said flatly.
This land belongs to the neighboring ranch. It has for 4 generations. The actual owner filed a trespass complaint against you 3 weeks ago when you first arrived.
My hands went numb. The paper slipped from my fingers. The owner filed a complaint?
Yes. Wyatt Miller, Cole's older brother.
I stopped breathing. I grabbed the porch railing. I could not stand up straight. Wyatt owned the cabin. Wyatt knew his brother scammed me. Wyatt filed a trespass complaint 3 weeks ago, right around the time he started showing up to fix my roof.
Mr. Miller owns the entire ridge.
David said.
He requested we give you 30 days to vacate, out of courtesy. That 30 days is up on Monday.
I didn't hear the rest of what the man said. I nodded. I turned around. I walked back inside. I locked the door. I walked to the kitchen sink. The sink Wyatt fixed. I gripped the porcelain edge. I threw up. Every moment of the last month flashed through my mind. The quiet smiles. The shared water bottles. the way he touched my face last night. It was a lie. He watched the stupid city girl fix up his property for free. Then the county would kick her out. He probably laughed at me every time he drove back to his sprawling ranch. I gave him my money through his brother. I gave him my labor. I gave him my trust. I pulled my suitcases from under the bed. I started throwing clothes into them. I didn't fold anything. I packed. I was going to leave the keys on the counter. I would drive away. I would sleep in my car. I needed to be off his land. I thought I could escape before he came back. I was wrong. Because an hour later, I heard the heavy rumble of Wyatt's truck. The engine cut off. Heavy boots crossed the porch. He knocked. "Clara?" His voice called out, deep, familiar. It made my stomach twist with nausea. I didn't answer. I zipped the first suitcase. I grabbed the handle of the suitcase. I walked to the front door. I threw the deadbolt open. I stood in the doorway. Wyatt was smiling. He held a paper bag. It smelled like fresh pastries. His smile died the second he saw my face. He looked down at the suitcase.
What's going on?
Wyatt asked. David Vance came by. I said. My voice was flat, slow. He told me about Cole. He told me about the complaint. Wyatt froze. The paper bag in his hand crumpled. His grip tightened. He didn't deny it. He didn't play dumb. He closed his eyes for a second.
Clara, let me explain.
Explain what? I stepped out onto the porch. Explain how you let me spend every cent I had on a fake deed. Explain how you watched me break my back fixing up your property. Or explain how you slept with me knowing I was getting evicted on Monday.
It wasn't like that.
He said. He took a step forward. I backed up. Don't touch me. He stopped. His chest heaved.
When I saw the lights on up here, I was furious. I knew Cole was pulling his scams again. I came up here that first night to throw you out.
But you didn't, I said.
No. I saw you sitting on the floor. You were crying. You were trying to make a home out of this rotting box. And then you yelled at me.
A sad smile touched his mouth.
I told myself I'd give you a few weeks, let you figure out it was too hard, let you leave on your own. I didn't want to be the one to break your heart.
So you let me keep working.
I helped you work because I couldn't stay away from you.
Wyatt ran a hand through his hair.
By the second week, I didn't care about the land. I cared about you. I didn't know how to tell you the truth. I knew if I told you Cole took your money, you'd hate my family.
You filed a trespass complaint. I canceled it, Wyatt said fiercely.
I went to the county office yesterday. That's why I wasn't here this morning. Vance had old paperwork. He shouldn't have come.
I shook my head. It doesn't matter, Wyatt. My money is gone. This is your house. I pushed past him. I dragged my suitcase toward my car. Wyatt grabbed my arm. Not hard, firm enough to stop me. He reached into his canvas jacket. He pulled out a thick envelope. He shoved it into my free hand. Look at it, he demanded. I stared at the envelope. I opened the flap. Inside was a cashier's check made out to me. It was for the exact amount I had paid his brother. Behind the check was a legal document, a real deed. It had the county seal. The owner listed was Clara Hayes.
I emptied my savings.
Wyatt said. His voice was ragged.
I paid back what Cole stole from you, and I transferred this parcel out of the family trust. I put it in your name, legally. It's yours, Clara, even if you leave right now and never speak to me again.
The wind blew through the pines. I looked at the check. I looked at the deed. Wyatt stood there. The tough rancher was shaking. He gave up a piece of his family's legacy to make me whole.
I dropped my suitcase in the mud.
My hands shook. I stared at the blue ink on the county seal. I stepped forward. I grabbed the front of his jacket. I pulled him down. I kissed him. He wrapped his arms around me. He lifted me off the ground. He buried his face in my neck. We stood there in the cold mountain air. We held onto each other like we were drowning. I held the deed in one hand and his jacket in the other. He gave me back my home. He gave me back my money. But he also lied to my face every single day for a month while I built a life on his land. I kissed him back. I let him carry me inside. But as the door shut behind us, I looked at the county seal on the paper in my hand. I wondered if a foundation built on a lie could ever hold up a roof.
If the man you loved hid a secret that big,
Even if he fixed it, could you forgive him? Or would you have driven away? What would you have done?